There's one final type of operator overload that's worth understanding. It's the conversion operator, sometimes called a conversion function. You can think of this like overloading a cast operator for casting your class to another type. Let's take a look at an example. Here I have a working copy of rational.cpp from chapter 4 of the exercise files. We've been using this for all of our operator overload lessons. And let's say that we want to create a string from our fraction. And so I'll just come down here and I'll add this at the end. And let's say we have a string s equals rational as a string. And then I concatenate that, do that in a separate operation. I'll say s plus equals, and that's actually an operator overload in the string class, s plus equals b. And that's our b fraction, which is 5/3. And you notice I get an error here because we don't have an operator overload for this right now. And that's okay, we'll fix that in a moment. And then I would say cout s and endl. Endl is the new line for cout. We've been using that throughout here. I may not have explained it. And so now we want to come down here and we want to create our operator overload for the conversion operator. And so that looks like this. So what it's returning is the operator itself. That's what it's returning. And it's this standard string like that. And I'll make it constant safe. And so this is what that operator overload looks like. Operator is actually on the left-hand side of the function signature, and standard string is the operator. That's the cast operator. And then we have our function operator and constant safe modifier. And so now I can come down here and this will look like this, rational operator. And it's saying basic string because that's what the standard string resolves to, but I'm going to go ahead and use the standard string because it's easier to see. And our function will look like this. We're going to define a constant for the maximum size of our string and a buffer to put it in. And then we're going to use a function called snprintf. And if you're compiling this in Microsoft Visual C++, you might get a warning that there's a safer version of snprintf with an _s at the end. Feel free to use that, but that's not standard and I'm using standard C++. So s and max string, and I'll explain this in a moment. And this is what it looks like. So snprintf, that's like printf, except it puts it in a string. And the n stands for being able to use a maximum size. So that's like the safe version of sprintf. And so this format string is exactly the same as for printf, and we'll cover printf in a lot more detail later in the course. And so that takes two integers, and so we have our numerator and our denominator. And so it'll format that string and put it in a C string, and then return that as a C++ string object. And so this is the C++ string class, and we're creating a temporary object and initializing it with the C string. Of course, there's different ways to implement this. Some people prefer to use string stream, which is a C++ object-oriented library, over snprintf. I like snprintf because it tends to be faster. That's probably because string stream has to use mutable buffers to do its magic. You could also put this logic in a separate getString method and then call that from the operator overload. In practice, that would probably be more flexible and the right way to do it, but this is for demonstration purposes. And so you can apply this same technique to convert your class to any type. Now you'll notice down here we no longer have an error, and when I build and run this, rational as a string 5/3. So that's in our string object here. So what we've done is this plus equals b, the string concatenation operator takes a C++ string object as its operand. And so our conversion operator is actually taking this b object, which is a rational object, and converting it using this operator overload to a string for the purpose of that function, basically, because this operator overload is a function. And so that gets concatenated into the string, and we print out the string, and there we have our result. So you can apply this same technique to convert your class to any type. The conversion operator overload is very useful. It allows you to use your class as a first class type and cast it to any other type, fully controlling how it's cast and how it's used.